In this presentation, I'll be exploring word retrieval and aphasia. Aphasia results from an acquired damage to the left hemisphere of the brain. It is an impairment of the input and output channels of verbal language, and that means expressive and receptive language is affected. Expressive, which includes spoken and written expression, and receptive, that includes auditory and reading comprehension, although severity may vary within each modality. It also affects all areas of language: phonology, morphology, semantics, and syntax. Although language is not completely lost, it actually shows up as a reduced availability of words, reduced efficiency of words, where grammatical features are lost or overused, and also reduced auditory retention span, meaning recall and repetition of words is reduced. It is also a primary language deficit, which means the problem is with words, and the degree of language impairment is more severe than any other accompanying conditions, such as hearing loss, dementia, or motor speech issues. Anomia or word-finding problems is a core deficit in aphasic patients. Word retrieval problems across different types of aphasia is further complicated by fluency issues, auditory comprehension deficits, and poor repetition. These complications result in certain characteristics and behaviors, such as circumlocution, which is when someone has difficulty coming up with a word and they talk around it; paragrammatism, which is when words are lost and the aphasic speaks fluently with more grammatical features than needed; neologism, which is when an aphasic uses a made-up word because true words are lost; jargon, which is when a fluent aphasic uses a string of made-up words; and perseveration, which is when a correctly produced word is repeated after it is no longer relevant. Semantic feature analysis is a treatment that involves strengthening of lexical and semantic connections, thereby improving word retrieval in patients with aphasia. In this type of treatment, the client is provided guidance to produce a target word by working through its semantic features, such as group, use, action, properties, location, and association. For example, if the target word is fish, the semantic cues we could use are as follows. For group, you could say that it belongs to the group of animals. For use, you could say that you could eat it. For action, you could say that it swims. For properties, you could say that it has fins and scales. For location, you could say that it lives in the ocean or the sea. For association, you could say SeaWorld or an aquarium or even sushi. With this literature review, I wish to explore how effective semantic feature analysis treatment is in improving word retrieval difficulties in patients with aphasia. The first study I looked at investigated the effects of semantic feature analysis on confrontation naming of trained and untrained exemplars in an adult with aphasic dysnomia. The researcher particularly wanted to explore whether using a large number of stimuli promotes generalization more efficiently than using the same small number of stimuli in each session. Participant was a 52-year-old male with Broca's aphasia. Treatment included 3 60-minute sessions per week for a total of 16 sessions in 7 weeks. And semantic feature analysis was used to help the participant retrieve trained targets. Participants were guided orally and in writing. Error responses were met with verbalization of target word, and the participant was asked to repeat it as well as review all the features of the target word, and that's regardless of the correct word production. Results indicated that the treatment improved naming on treated and untrained pictures. Although there was no generalization in connected speech, it can also be concluded that the improved naming was due to the participant internalizing prompts and using it to self-cue. Although this study also needs to be replicated with more than just one subject to be deemed effective. The second study I looked at involved more participants than the first study. The researchers more specifically looked at generalization for untrained items and whether training effect is maintained. Participants were 3 males, 1 with anomic aphasia and 2 with conduction aphasia. 36 pictured nouns that were incorrectly named were used for the treatment. They were divided into trained and untrained items and then equally distributed into 2 lists. Each list treated sequentially for 3 weeks per week for 2 weeks. The semantic cues for trained items were developed prior to the treatment using a semantic feature analysis chart. The participants were asked questions about each target. The researcher then used 4 semantically related cues that are the most meaningful to the participant for the treatment. During the training, the researcher and the participant read the 4 self-generated cues out loud for the trained items. Then the participant was asked to name the target. The untrained items were probed by asking the participant to simply name the target picture. 2 out of 3 participants improved in sets of trained items as well as probed untrained items. Performance was maintained for 1 week after therapy. It was concluded that the improvement in naming performance was due to the participant internalizing prompts and using it to self-cue. They also found that generalization occurred only due to repeated probing. The third study I looked at investigated the use of this treatment in connected speech during an aphasia group training. It was hypothesized that the use of this treatment would improve efficiency of word retrieval and ultimately improve connected speech as well. Participants were a mixed group of people, varying in age and severity of word retrieval issues. One also had hearing issues and wore a baha, and another one had an atypical presentation of transcortical motor aphasia, where he had auditory comprehension deficits. Participants met in a small group setting for an hour and a half to 2 hours, twice a week for 7 weeks. This study incorporated a modified version of the semantic feature analysis chart, and so it included short description of each semantic feature. And participants were guided through the features orally and in writing when they experienced word retrieval problems in describing the stimuli to their listening partner during discourse. The clinician provided cues in the form of a phonemic cue. Upon still making an error or an absence of a response, the clinician verbalized the stimuli and had the participant repeat it, as well as review all its features. Homework was also given biweekly to facilitate generalization. It varied in complexity depending on the participant's progress in therapy. All 4 participants showed improvement in the ability to retrieve lexical-semantic relations during connected speech. They also displayed an increased rate of content production during discourse. On the contrary, low homework completion rate was seen in participants who had low auditory comprehension and more severe non-linguistic cognitive skill deficit. Semantic feature analysis chart or treatment was therefore beneficial in this study when used as a strategy in a naturalistic conversation in the context of a group aphasia therapy. Though more research is needed to determine optimal number of participants in the group, consideration for the nature and the severity of the word retrieval deficit, and how to measure gains in the participants who have severe auditory comprehension issues. In conclusion, the use of semantic feature analysis in these studies demonstrate positive gains in participants with fluent and non-fluent aphasias. More gains were noticed in participants with mild to moderate aphasias and trained and untrained items. This approach can be used as a strategy in context of a group aphasia therapy as well, though more research is needed involving larger and more diverse study groups to substantiate the exact conditions under which specific aphasic population would make the most gains. Variables such as frequency of probing, generalization techniques, individual versus group therapy, etc., can be further investigated and modified to improve treatment outcomes. Thank you.